Welcome back to The Muse and Greg. Please like and subscribe to stay across more content like this. Now today we're comparing the King's 200 watt solar blanket with a 225 watt unit from a company called Allspark and seeing which one you should buy. Now this King's blanket is about a year old now, but we'll take its drop in performance into account when we get to that section of the video. Now since I covered this King's blanket in detail in an earlier video when we compared it with the Red Arc unit, I'm not going to go over the same ground here, but if you haven't seen that video yet and you want a bit more information on the King's blanket itself, I'd recommend you check that one out first. But what about the competitor, Allspark? Well, it was actually while shooting that King's vs Red Arc video in mid-2021 that I first came across Allspark. One of my beasts with both solar blankets was that it was very hard to prop them up at the right angle to catch the sun. But at Ellenbray Station on the Gibb River Road, in Western Australia's Kimberley region, I stumbled across a blanket with built-in fold-away legs, which turned out to be an Allspark. I also had a review recommendation for Allspark in the comments on that video. So when a viewer, Jeff, offered to loan me the Allspark blanket he'd just bought so I could use it in a review, I jumped at the opportunity. Jeff, thank you very much. When folded up, the Allspark blanket is pretty similar to the King's, with the Allspark being a fraction wider and a little taller. Unfolded, the Allspark has a single row of 5 panels that's about 2.2 metres long, whereas the King's has 6 panels in a more compact 2x3 configuration. Both weigh exactly the same, 6.5 kilos. Both also have a well-sized storage pouch for cables and accessories, and the bodies of both blankets are made from flexible woven polyester, which is a good choice. Both blankets are also made in China. Despite these similarities, there are a number of differences between the two blankets. The big thing is, as I mentioned earlier, the Allspark unit has folding legs attached to the back of each panel, which means you can easily prop the blanket up at an angle to catch the sun, and this is a huge selling point for me. Another key difference is the solar cells used in each blanket. The Allspark panel uses monocrystalline SunPower brand cells, which are generation 3 cells, and that's why these cells look very similar to those in the now discontinued Red Arc blanket, which used an earlier version of these cells. SunPower cells are very pricey, but they have a great reputation for performance, efficiency and reliability, so it's a good component to have in a premium blanket. The King's blanket, well, this is advertised as having high quality grade A monocrystalline solar cells. I'd highly question the high quality moniker based on how poorly my first 3 performed. As we saw in the last video, the 150 watt Red Arc blanket that came with SunPower cells consistently outperformed the brand new 200 watt King's blanket, so the panels on the King's are definitely not their strong point. This major disconnect between the advertised rating and what King's in particular really gives you in the real world is a great cause of concern for me, and that's why independent reviews such as this one are so important to understand how they really work in the real world. The King's blanket has fabric loops to hang the blanket vertically, which I do know from experience eventually tear off. The Allspark blanket on the other hand has got good solid steel eyelets just like the Red Arc unit had. The fabric edges of the Allspark blanket are doubled over and stitched, so there are 4 layers of material along the edges where the eyelets join and up to 16 layers at the corners, so I'd expect they'd be very strong. Although I did notice a slight tear in the fabric on one corner. I'm not sure if this was already there before I started or if it happened during the testing. The King's unit comes with a 1-year warranty, while the Allspark unit comes with a very generous 5-year warranty. So looking at all the features between the two blankets, the Allspark is definitely the pick of the bunch. As far as pricing and accessories goes, the King's blanket comes with a 4-metre Anderson plug lead and a set of alligator clips to an Anderson plug adapter. It used to retail for about $200 with a basic PWM regulator, but they've recently replaced this with an MPPT regulator, so it now sets you back $289. Even if this blanket only gives you about 75 to 80 watts in the real world, it's still not a bad starting package. The Allspark blanket comes with a 5-metre cable and retails for $849, but you can add on to this a tracer MPPT regulator and other connectors if you want to. I reckon at this price point, making the accessories optional is the right way to go, and it's a recommendation I made to Red Arc in the last video. If you're purchasing a more expensive blanket like this, chances are you may already have some accessories from an earlier purchase. But when you spec this blanket up with the same accessories as the King's, the Allspark will set you back $958, which is a lot of extra money to consider. It's just over 3 times the price of the King's. Although, as I said, the warranty is 5 times longer, and the Allspark's 5-metre cable is considerably thicker than the 4-metre unit supplied with the King's unit, so you do get lower cable losses on the Allspark cable. I'll say the King's wins here simply because it's cheaper, but obviously price is far from the only factor to consider. Form factor is all about how the physical attributes of a product affect its use. Since these two are so similar in size when folded up, there's really not much in it when it comes to storage. The Allspark blanket does have a slightly larger footprint, so it's probably a little bit trickier to store than the King's. Also, being closer to a square in its proportions, the Allspark doesn't give you as much flexibility as the King's does when you rotate it around 90 degrees if you need to tuck it into a nook. So this is a slight win for the King's, but really, both units are almost as easy to store as each other. 95% of the time when you're moving and transporting these blankets around, you're not going to notice a difference, so you'd almost call this a dead heat. Both units are about the same size, and they weigh exactly the same 6.5 kilos, and they've both got a carry handle, so there's none of the awkwardness that the Red Ark suffered. The only area you could split hairs with is on the handle itself. The Allspark has got a single handle attached to the end of the blanket, while the King's has got two material handles attached to two different parts of the blanket, which can be velcroed together if you want. I prefer the single handle of the Allspark because it's always right there ready to go, and you don't have to pull two bits of fabric together. Also, on the Allspark blanket, it's got a rubber load spreader to help keep the handle flat, and it's a bit more comfortable in your hand. So this one is a slight win for the Allspark. For setup and pack up, I reckon the King's configuration has got the edge. You can unpack and repack its 2x3 configuration in 3 steps hardly without thinking about it. It's very intuitive. The Allspark's long and skinny form factor means it's a bit trickier to do both. Firstly, it's too long to unpack holding in the air, so you need to lie it down and unfold it, and there's some extra concertinaing to unfold the long strip of panels. When it comes to pack up, you have to think a bit more carefully about the order in which you fold up the panels on the Allspark unit, just like you had to on the Red Ark unit, to make sure you get with the last blanket with the right bit of Velcro folding around the right way. But once you've done that a few times, you do get the hang of the process. Anyway, King's probably takes this round. When it comes to blanket setup, this is where the Allspark really comes into its own. The built-in legs are such a great feature because you can fairly easily prop the blanket up at the right angle to catch the sun. The other reason this is important is because the panels will stay a lot cooler when they've got ventilation around their back compared to lying flat on the ground or on a vehicle's bonnet or windscreen. Cooler panels means more power output and a longer lifespan. So all in all, this is a brilliant feature. I have to say though, I did find the legs a little bit tricky to get them to stay out. They're attached at the top and they've got a material tether at the bottom to stop them going out too far, but they just swing freely and had a fairly annoying habit of wanting to swing back in when you try to pull them out. Or if you do get one into position, then it swings back when you're trying to pull the next leg out. This is particularly a problem if you're on a slight downhill. Once you've got the hang of how to do it, you tend to get around this, but I found the best way to do this is to pull the first 2 legs out together, working from behind the blanket, and then get them well located on the ground, and then carefully pull the 3rd leg out without lifting the blanket up too much, but then you can slowly work your way along for all the other 2 and have all the legs pulled out. I probably would have rather have seen a solid support structure behind each leg that could fold out and lock into position so the legs stay out rather than just a piece of fabric. That way you could pull the legs out and have them stay in place. As I showed last time, there's really no elegant way of propping the King's blanket up at an angle. And the unfortunate reality of not having legs is that the King's blanket will end up being used lying flat on the ground, which isn't its best angle, so it won't catch as much sun and generate as much output, but it'll also run hotter. Both mean less power while it's working and a faster fail rate. When you come to hang the blanket vertically to catch the morning or afternoon sun, I found the long configuration of the Allspark unit much more unwieldy to manage than the shorter length of both the King's and the Red Ark blankets. It was simply too long to be able to hold the whole blanket securely while you attached it to the hooks. You'd have to lay one part of the blanket on the ground and pull the whole blanket up and hang it by one corner before you then start working on the other side. Either that or have a couple of people doing it. But even then I found the blanket was just too long to be able to hang into any of the positions I usually hang my soil blankets on. That said, I'm sure if I owned this permanently, I'd work something out. So that aside, the benefits of the legs on the Allspark blanket outweighs the other issues for me, so Allspark wins this round. Now we come to build quality, and just as with the Red Ark, the Allspark is a clear step up in terms of build quality from the King's. Everything I said last time about panel strength applies here because the Allspark uses sun power cells just like the Red Ark did. The cells on the Allspark themselves are a lot more flexible than the King's, which makes them more forgiving to twists and slight misalignments than the King's more rigid panels. They show no signs of cracking or breaking when they're flexed, which can't be said for the King's. The sun power cells have got a durable ETFE coating, and in my time with the Red Ark blanket it showed no signs of damage, just as sun power claims. The King's blanket used some cheaper type of coating which quickly turns milky and scratches off. As I mentioned last time too, the sun power cells have this dimpled surface, which means even if there was any surface damage by the panel scrapping together, it would only affect a very small portion of the overall panel surface. So the cells on the Allspark blanket, frankly, are brilliant. As far as hanging fixings goes, this is exactly the same as the King's versus Red Ark video, because the Allspark uses a solid stainless steel eyelets just like the Red Ark did. So, how do they work? Firstly, here's how we're going to make this a fair comparison with an old King's blanket. In the last video, when the King's blanket was new, it put out around 90 watts flat on the ground about 9:30 in the morning in May 2021. We were right up north of Western Australia at the time, where the sun's more overhead, so I did a comparative test down here in the Perth Hills about an hour later in the morning to simulate a similar sun position. Under these conditions, the King's blanket put out about 75 watts, which is a drop of about 17%. This also broadly correlates to the difference between the best King's result from each test and also the decline this blanket showed towards the end of the Red Arc video. We'll take this 17% performance drop into account when reviewing the results of this test, although as we'll see, this really puts the King's ahead of almost every test I ran last year. Here's the test setup I'll be using. I used either the 5m Allspark Anderson plugs cable or the 10m King's cable. The two 100Ah batteries were discharged to around about 12.5 volts. Now last time we had full sun and clear skies for almost all of our tests. This time we've been able to take advantage of a wide range of weather conditions, including overcast, mottled shade and full shade, as well as different blanket angles. So the results between the two tests won't be directly comparable, but we will get a better overview of varied condition performance. Allspark claims on their website that their blanket has the highest shade and temperature tolerance, outperforms any other panel in overcast, partial shade or high temperatures, so we'll test that. So let's look at the results. For nerds who love stats, here are all the tests I did, many of which were just on the Allspark blanket, while this table here shows just the side-by-side comparisons between the two blankets under identical conditions. For the rest of us, let's look at some graphs. King's power is blue, while Allspark power is yellow. The light blue and light yellow columns display each blanket's power as a percentage of the advertised maximum, i.e. how realistic it is, where 100% is this orange line about halfway up. Let's start with both blankets out in full sun propped up at an angle. The King's puts out around about 106 watts, allowing for the 17% loading for its age, or just over half its rated maximum, while the Allspark puts out a median of 176 watts, which is close to 80% of its rated maximum. The 6 yellow dots are the 6 separate full sun tests I did with the legs propped up, the best result being 186 watts, which was just about 82% of its rated power. As I said, even with this King's blanket when it was brand new, I only ever had one single result over 100 watts. Most of the results I got were around about 75 to 80 watts when it was brand new, so saying 106 watts is actually being pretty generous to the King's, but let's leave it at that for now. Now the difficulty of propping the King's blanket up at an angle means that in practice it usually won't be set up that way. In the real world, the best comparison is going to be between having the King's blanket lying flat on the ground, which is how it will usually be used, and with the Allspark blanket with its legs out, which is also how it would normally be used. Under these conditions, I'm rating the King's at 84 watts, or 42% of its rating. Now this figure doesn't include the 17% loading, but it does correlate almost perfectly with the real world flat on the ground test results I had when this blanket was new. The Allspark graph here is unchanged from the previous one. So, if you're considering buying either of these blankets, this is probably the graph you want to work on to see what you can expect in ideal sort of conditions out in the full sun. The other three graphs are probably less useful, but I've included them here for the sake of completeness. The median full sun test is the median of all results that were out in the full sun, but most of these tests were done flat on the ground without using the Allspark's legs, which is of course hobbling one of its key advantages. The median shade and cloud test was taken under poor conditions, under shade, under smoke, under full partial cloud or whatever it might be. The Allspark claims to outperform every other panel or any other panel in overcast or partial shade or high temperatures. To be honest, I was a bit disappointed that the Allspark wasn't better than this. Under cloudy conditions, both blankets gave minimal output, and the Allspark was only marginally better than the Kings. It might be better, but it's only better by a small margin. If you take out the 17% loading given to the King's blanket, things do look a little bit better, but even then we're only talking the difference between 10 watts and 15 watts, or 6 watts and 8.5 watts. It's hardly anything to get excited about. So don't buy either of these blankets expecting useful outputs under cloudy conditions. And lastly, overall median and average are next to useless because so many test conditions here were less than ideal, but I've just included them here to round out the results. So no surprises here, the Allspark completely outperformed the Kings both in terms of absolute power and also how close it gets to its advertised rating. I think most people would be pretty happy getting around about 75 to 80% of a blanket's advertised maximum simply by plugging it in and not doing much else. I'm not sure too many people would get excited about 42% from the Kings, which roughly lines up with the results we got from the last time we tested it. What about the cost per watt of power? Well, working on the most likely scenario, the Kings at $289 for 84 watts of power gives you a cost of $3.44 per watt, while the Allspark's $958 for 176 watts works out to $5.44 per watt. That's less than 50% more for buying the Allspark. So while the Allspark's price is 3 times that of the Kings, when you look at how much power you get for that money, it's only about 1.5 times the price per watt than the Kings. And if you don't need the accessories, then that drops down to below $5 per watt. Between the few blankets I've looked at so far, the Allspark really ticks almost all of the boxes I wished for on a premium solar blanket. It has the brilliant sun power cells and steel eyelets I loved from the Red Arc blanket, but on a more flexible canvas body than the Red Arc's rubber one. It also achieves pretty well everything I suggested the Red Arc could improve on. A price of about $800, an accessory kit, carry straps, an accessory pouch, and legs to prop the blanket up. I emailed Allspark some detailed questions about how they make their blankets, in particular their involvement in the design and component selection part of the Chinese manufacturing process, and I received a detailed and well thought out response. They design and choose all the components themselves and they just assemble it in China. So I'd take the Allspark over the discontinued Red Arc every day of the week unless I absolutely needed the smaller footprint of the Red Arc. As far as choosing between the Allspark and the Kings, it's a slightly harder proposition, but only slightly. The Kings gives you everything you need to get started for under $300, although as I said you can ignore the laughable 200 watt rating. It'll produce around 80 watts under most conditions. It's not a bad choice if you travel occasionally, have low power needs, and particularly if you're on a tight budget. Is it worth spending 3 times as much for the Allspark? Well, if you only need about 80 watts for occasional travel, then I'd probably say no. I doubt you'd get the returns on your investment if you're spending $900 on a blanket and if you're only using it to run some LED lights twice a year. But if you need more than 120 watts, particularly if you're travelling more frequently, and you can handle the upfront cost, I would definitely say the Allspark is worth the money. Remember what you get for that extra money. You're only spending 1.5 times as much per watt of power, so you're getting a lot more power out of it to start with. You get a 5-year warranty, a claimed 25 plus years of laminate UV resistance, and the peace of mind of knowing you've got super reliable solar cells which just work. Plus you've got the legs, which mean you can get the optimum sun angle while keeping the cells cooler. As far as improvements, for the Kings, it's just the same as last time, quality. I did get an email from somebody fairly high up within Kings after the last video offering some off-the-record insights into future product line directions and seeking some feedback, but unfortunately I never heard back from them after my initial response and follow-up email, which was quite disappointing. I can only hope they'll work on picking up the quality. For Allspark, well, as I said, they really have ticked nearly every box. If I was going to be picky, my main 2 irritations were the long 5x1 configuration, which was fairly hard to manoeuvre, and also the annoying non-locking legs. I get it that it's the simplest configuration without making it even more expensive, but my ideal configuration would probably be a 2x3 blanket with some kind of locking mechanism to lock the 2 rows of panels together into a solid structure, and a similar locking mechanism behind each folding leg to hold the legs into position. The only questions remaining are whether any of the other sub-500 units on the market provide a better cheap option than the Kings, and whether any of the more expensive options provide a better expensive option than the Allspark. Those are questions for another day, but between the products we're looking at today, the Kings and the Allspark is a clear winner from this shootout. Thanks again to Jeff for the loan of this blanket and making this video possible. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.